Now that was all that I in the Old Testament, just to because people was like, oh, that's only because a lot of people want to say that some verses are just only in the New Testament, and then that God and His commands and the law of Moses and stuff is all in the Old Testament. And I just read all those verses was from the Old Testament, proving that God Himself had chosen prophetess, I should say, Himself, and that He used women to be the first to tell people, and even high-ranking kings and high-ranking priests, what He says. Now, if He wanted women to be quiet and not speak and preach, then why would He tell them first? Why would He have them go tell priests what He said? Wouldn't He just go to the high priest himself and tell them? Wouldn't He just tell them kings himself? No, He had women do it for a very good reason. Now, we're going to skip on down to the New Testament, okay? First, we're going to begin with Matthew chapter 28, verses 8 through 10. And they departed quickly from the supper, with fear and great joy, and did run to bring His disciples word. 9. And as they went to tell His disciples, behold, Jesus met them, saying, all hail. And they came and held Him by the feet, and they worshiped Him. Verse 10. Then Jesus said unto them, be not afraid. Go tell my brethren that they go into Galilee, and there they shall see me. Again, Jesus said right there, told women first. And what did He have them do? Go tell the men. If it was men was so important to rank above the men, why didn't He go to the men first? Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one. And now we're going to be in Mark chapter 16, verses 9 and 10. Now when Jesus was risen early the first day of the week, He appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom He had cast 7 devils. And she went and told them that they had been with Him, as they mourned and as they wept. And again, we're going to go into Luke 24, verses 9 and 10. And returned from the supper, and told all these things unto the 11, and to all the rest. It was Mary Magdalene, and Joanna, and Mary the mother of James, and the other women that were with them, which told these things unto the apostles. Now notice that I read from Matthew 28, verses 8 through 10. Mark 16, verses 9 through 10. Luke 24, verses 9 through 10. We know that God is very amazing in what He does in the Bible, and how everything links to one to another. Explain to me why, if it's got to be very important, for the simple fact that those being said was in every single one of those books, all 3 books, was on verses 9 and 10. 9 and 10. 9 and 10. Means it was very important. Take heed to this, pay attention to this, because otherwise all His numberings that He does in the Bible, He does for a specific reason. That means He wants you to pay attention. And obviously, they all made sure to tell you that Jesus spoke to the women first and told them to go tell the men. He didn't come to the men. Jesus told the women to go preach to the men first. And notice that how when both those people put those in the Bible, in the books, that they all happen to be, why are they all in verse 9 through 10 in each different book? Because it's very important. God's cool like that. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next one. Now we're gonna be in the book of John, chapter 20, verse 18. Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord, and that He had spoken these things unto her. And when she speaks these things, later on it says that Peter gets mad because First of all, he don't believe that God spoke to her and didn't speak to him, but it very well proves that he did. There's also the Gospel of Mary, which is not written in the Bible, but near the end of her Gospel, and I wish I would have written it down, but I forgot about that till just now, that Peter gets upset at her and says, why would God tell you these things first and not tell us? He very much gets, and she speaks in her Gospel how Peter gets upset, is mad because God speaks certain things, knowledge that she knew that none of the men disciples knew whatsoever. That was like he shared everything with all the disciples all at once, but there were some things that he specifically told Mary and did not tell the men disciples. Wonder what that is, because she was the one who was supposed to preach it to them. There's a few times in the Bible actually where Peter gets upset because Jesus had favored Mary Magdalene over telling such important things to her first versus telling the men. Now we're going to move to Luke chapter 2 verses 36 through 38. And there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was of a great age and had lived with an husband 7 years from her virginity, and she was a widow of about 84 years, and which departed not from the temple, but served God with fastings and prayers night and day. And she's coming in that instant, gave thanks likewise unto the Lord, and spake of him to all that looked for redemption in Jerusalem. See, it even speaks there that she was a prophetess. Not only that, but who she was the daughter of, and what tribe she came from. And as a matter of fact, it shows right there, not only when she spoke, but she spoke to people and they listened. Not only that, but she also fasted and prayed night and day. I mean, she had a close relationship with God. Okay, we're going to move to Romans chapter 16 verses 1. Now remember, this is coming out of Paul's mouth. I command unto you Phoebe, our sister, which is a servant of the church, which is at Centura. I don't know if that said that wrong, but you know what I mean, so to speak. And that is coming out of Paul's mouth. He is recognizing Phoebe to be a servant of the church. That means she is preaching in that church, in that area. So we're going to move on to verse 7. And he says, this is come out of Paul's mouth. Salute Andronicus and Juna, my kinsmen, and my fellow prisoners, who are of note among the apostles, who were also in Christ before me. Now, that Juna person is a female, and he's calling her an apostle that was even an apostle before he was. And that's out of Paul's mouth. Now we're going to move on to verses 20 to Acts chapter 21, verses 8 and 9. On the next day, we that were of Paul's company departed and came unto Caesarea. I don't know how to say that. And we entered into the house of Philip, the evangelist, which was one of the 7, and abode with him. And the same man that had 4 daughters, virgins, which did prophesy. So that right there is telling you there was 4 more female who was the daughters, who was Philip the evangelist. So that right there just said that there was even more 4 prophetesses right there that Paul knew, and he was good friends with Philip, and he traveled with them. He knew that they prophesied. Now we're going to move on back to John chapter 4 verses 39. Oops, wrong page. Sorry. And many of the Samaritans of that city believed on him, for the saying of the woman, which testified, he told me all that I ever did. Now that is speaking of the Samaritan woman. Here's the thing we all know, when Jesus was going about, that he said, it says in there, for now was not the time. Now was not the time. Okay, the very first story and the very first person he goes and speaks to and tells that he is the Messiah out of his mouth is a woman. The woman at the well, the Samaritan woman. She wasn't even Jew. So the first people he told was the Samaritans, not even the Jews, not even the Gentiles. It was the Samaritans, the outcasts. the outcast, the half-breeds. And he told it to a woman first. The first person he spoke to and said, I am the I am, and I am the Messiah, that he wanted to go and